What condition are these bearings going to be in? This is what stops a lot of people driving in salt water. The maintenance. I've had to bring out one of the heavy hitters. So this is the adjuster I was talking about. The pop was, this here was actually rusted onto that. I found a little problem here. Everything in there's got rust on it. You know, in a perfect world, that would just pull off now that I'm backed right off, but it's not a perfect world when you own a 79. All right, I've sort of had enough now of trying to baby this thing. I just want it off. A bit of a maintenance video and also a bit of an update on whether or not we will get to the Cape. So you can see here from the flood cameras that the roads actually look okay. The Wenlock and the Pasco still seem quite high, but that's on the old telly track. The problem we've got is on the 23rd of March, this is supposed to hit. So whether or not they open the PDR, Shell and the kids are booked on a plane, we'll make our decision basically the eve before I have to leave, which is 3 days earlier, on whether I'll be taking the Jayco or not. A job that needs doing nonetheless, is we need to get into these wheel bearings. So here we've got the wheels off, the calipers unbolted. We're going to get this disc off so we can get in there first and clean up the handbrake before we then take the axles out and get into those bearings. Now what the Bible says at 20,000 Ks is replace front and rear wheel bearing grease. What we've got up our sleeves for this little exercise is I've actually got brand new bearings. We've got the P26 brake and parts cleaner with the high temperature wheel bearing grease from Penrite. Everything in there's got rust on it, and that's from that trip at Christmas time, and this is why I did a transmission handbrake on the grey truck. So this here's been damaged. The shoe stuck to the back of the drum with the rust. So luckily with the grey truck I did buy replacement ones because this did happen before. Okay, a bit of a punish. I was able to get that retaining washer in. Okay, now we've got to clean this as best we can, and then we've got to pull the axle out. I wonder if Toyota do that for you when you take your truck in. Bringing my Bakita back, Mac. I'm aged now. Clean, 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 and more clean. You don't get tools like this in your toolkit now, even buying an expensive ute like this, but this was out of my original LN46 Silver Bullet Hilux. I found a little problem here. It looks like that shoe's been damaged. I don't have another pair. The pads look fine. What we're going to do, we're going to back the adjuster right off. Now the adjuster is down at 6 o'clock and you want to be going down. So this is the adjuster I was talking about. So down winds it in. So that's what you got to do to make it easier to take the drum off. Now it's a guess where you are, but if you're dead 6 o'clock and you go in straight, there's teeth on the wheel that helps the adjuster. You know, in a perfect world, that would just pull off now that I'm backed right off, but it's not a perfect world when you own a 79. So this one's feels like it's welded itself to the hub. There we go, it's a pop. All right, there we go. So what the pop was this here was actually rusted onto that. So that's what the salt water's done. It's basically welded that disc to the back of that hub. So let's get this all cleaned up. These ones seem to be okay. They haven't pulled away, and then we're going to get the axles out. Unfortunately, the black can was no good. That's the only problem with the Duramax. If you leave it on the shelf for too long, the paint doesn't like it, not like the epoxy enamel. Now I know there's going to be a lot of people that have just started typing, I've owned my car for X amount of years, I've done this many Ks, I've never adjusted my handbrake, I've never had to repack my bearings. But the difference between some of the people that have owned their cars for 5-7 years and never really taken them off-road, as opposed to this vehicle, 1 year old, 20,000 Ks, and it gets flogged. Salt water is bad, and Brian is right. This is what stops a lot of people driving in salt water, the maintenance. I know you're all cringing, but I'm gonna have to put the nuts on and just keep tapping the edge of that axle. Just rusted itself on. Now the reason I'm putting the nuts on is because these are gonna shoot out at 100 miles an hour and I don't wanna lose them. Now you can imagine if something's gone wrong in the bush, you're ankle deep in mud and you're fixing this. It's happened to me before. Hitting in between the threads. Not ideal. Just put a little bit of load on these. See if it helps. I think I'm just starting to get a bit of separation on that one. Once you get one, yep, we got one, that's it. So we're on the way. What a punish. We still may need those bolts because the axle might still be tight to get out. You can see the rust in the cone washer up against the edge of that axle. I'll get a lot of negative feedback for hitting the axle like that, but I have tried to take it out the conventional way. So Toyota's changed the service interval on their bearings to 20,000. So back in 2016, they didn't mention wheel bearings until around the 40, and they had a lot of people coming in with collapsed wheel bearings. Here's mine at 42,000 on the grey truck. Cone washers are out. It's not going to move, is it? So this is where we use the bolts again. Got separation just. So we'll keep going. We can hear that gasket starting to peel off the hub too. So we're getting there. See, this has opened up a little bit. This is the problem one. That's starting to move. All right, I've sort of had enough now of trying to baby this thing. I just want it off. The locating dowel is staying on the axle. Plenty of separation, but it's just not letting go. I've had to bring out one of the heavy hitters. Pretty sure I'm gonna have a new gasket, which it will need now that I'm butchering it like this. But at the end of the day, I need it out. All right, what condition are these bearings gonna be in? So you can see here, that's all rust. So the salt water's penetrated down between the gap and it's rusted where there is no gasket. So I think I remember on the grey truck I did a video and I Sikaflexed the entire surface so that there was no chance of the rust sticking. But that bearing retainer doesn't look too bad, to be honest. So you can see there the rust where the gasket doesn't go all the way to the edge. But that locating dowel, that should stay on the hub. So the passenger side, you can see the two dowels, they actually stayed on the hub like they were supposed to. Still stuck good, but still rusty there. So it's like the two rusted surfaces weld themselves together. All right, let's see how these screws come out. I've had to replace these in the past too. Okay. So these lock that retainer on. I generally put new ones in each time I come in here too. but they're in good nick. So that trip we did up north, we're on the beach a long time, but I never went deeper than my hub. So not deep enough to penetrate water into this area, hopefully. So we undo this. And then that whole hub comes off. So you can see the smaller of the two bearings. It does look quite dry, doesn't it? And dirty. Toyota grease looks like Vaseline. Now the way I'm thinking with this is I've got to get in there and clean it all. I feel by the time I clean all this stuff up and repack them anyway, I may as well be putting new bearings and races in it. Pity I haven't got a spare hub set up already just to do a big swapsy. So that's the decision. Now look, because I've got everything, I've got the seals and I've got the bearings, I don't have to buy anything. I'm a year into it, I'm about to do a run up to cans. I've decided instead of repacking, I'll keep them as spares, we'll throw new ones in. Now look, you're not going to see that it's blue. It's unfortunate that the black can didn't spray properly, but these are going to be behind the cap there on the 16-inch GXL wheels. So you're not actually going to see it's blue. But at least I've got paint on it now. It's not just bare metal. We've got a couple of bits of timber here. We've got the hub the right way up, and we're going to knock the back bearing down. It's also going to push the seal back out through the back. Okay, have a rag down to catch all the Toyota grease. So there we have it. We've got the back bearing and the seal. I don't know what Toyota think about going in there and repacking the bearings without replacing the seal. I'm not sure. Maybe they do when they do the service, but I wouldn't be putting that seal back in. Good bearings as spares though. So these will go in the spare parts bag. Now we're going to knock the racers out. As you all seen before, we cut the old race with a grinder, and that's how we knock the new one in. Okay, top one's home. Same deal with the back one. Rear one's home. So rust in here is bad. So if you're in here and it's bad, sand it off. Do yourself that favor. That's the ABS reader. Now when things get in the way of this and the probe that's on the diff, you do get all sorts of ABS issues. So clean all this up, spend the time, bit of sandpaper, and then sand all this too. These are not easy to get. I tried to get one from Toyota a while back, and I think I had to buy the whole hub. But that's a ring, but I couldn't get it aftermarket, and I couldn't get it genuine on its own. Clean hands, now we're packing. So what I'll do, I've only got one hub off, but I'll pack all four and just have them sitting in a container. The way I'm only filthy once. So as it comes through the rollers, you know you're good. Here's our pre-packed platter. So we got the new seal, and we can use the old race to gently knock that in too. So before we sit that front one in, what I'm going to do, I'm going to fill the cavity full of the bearing grease. Flush in there. If you remember the Toyota one, it looked like Vaseline. It was the same. So we'll drop that front one in, and then we'll just refill. So we're flush, bearing to bearing. And then we'll sit it on the spindle. Putting it back, you've got to put this washer in first, which has got the 4 threaded holes. So you can't put this in the wrong way. So unlike the front, you pretty much can't get this wrong. You can't be too tight or too loose because you won't be able to get those 2 screws in. So you can see where the screw wants to go in. It's even threaded on this top end of it. So there's lots of those on this washer here. And even with the shape of the screw, see the start of it, if you're a little bit off, it's going to pull this one around to where the holes are, as long as you're close. So I'll show you what I mean. So we turn this around until we're sort of finger tight, and then we've got to remember where those threads were on the inside washer. They were around the 2 o'clock, 4 o'clock. Feel that that's going to be too far past 2 o'clock. This here looks like it's around 4. So what you do, you just have a fish and see. So that's going. So that means it's going to be the opposite one up here that we get to put the second one in. So on the other side it was the opposite. It was 2 o'clock, 7 o'clock, it was these two. But we'll double check that when we put the wheel on, make sure there's no bearing play. But I couldn't go any tighter, because going tighter needs me to bring that one to there, and that's not going to happen. We've got the axle back in, we're doing up the nuts. And we're back to handbrake shoes all the way in so that we can slip the disc over the top. It should slip over easily. So that was a little bit too easy. We want to get it as close as possible where we're not fishing for a long time blind. So where I can still take it on and off that easily, I'm miles from being right in adjustment. I want it to be dragging, so it's still just touching now. Everything is so hot here today. This should be the one. All right, so that's a bit tight. So we'll back it off just a little bit. So that's where I'll bolt the caliper on, and then we'll do our final adjustment through the adjusting hole. The caliper's bolted up. We're doing our final adjustment now before we put the wheel on. So what we'll do, we've run out of time. I'll make up a separate video of the front end. I hope it's been helpful. I hope you enjoyed it. And as always, thanks for watching.